Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 33 of my 2021 reads. This week I was in a bit of a reading funk, so I had a hard time getting into anything. I did finish 3 kind of easy, gentle reads, and I did NFN and DNF 2 books. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. The first book that I finished this week was Dark Waters by Katherine Arden. This is the 3rd book in a middle grade horror series, and I am really liking this series. Sush read this book out loud to me, and we just had such a fun time. It's very atmospheric. It follows these 3 kids who, starting in the first book in the fall, ran into some sort of scary supernatural things. And then in the winter, in the 2nd book, they had another run-in, and now in the spring, they're having a 3rd run-in. I really like that this story is kind of not just dealing with the scary thing that they're running into, but also talking about how they kind of are dealing with a lot of trauma from the past books. I liked that kind of acknowledgement of this is really scary, and now they are trying to work through a lot of that trauma while still being in the midst of the scary stuff that is happening. This one takes place kind of to deal with a lake and a boat and an island, and it's quite spooky. I really like the atmosphere. I liked just a lot of the interactions in this as well. It was just a very good read. I do think though that unlike the first 2 books, one of the main characters, Ollie, isn't very present in this one, which was just a little bit of a shame. And something that I was a little sad about is that this book ends on a cliffhanger, whereas the previous 2 books kind of were complete stories in and of themselves, even though the storyline is continuing throughout the series. This one very much ends on a cliffhanger, and I feel like that was just not so much my style. I would have preferred a complete book in and of itself and then the 4th book, but even so, I am very much looking forward to the 4th book, and I think that this is such a great series. If you like a spooky atmosphere but you can't handle the kind of more graphic content of adult horror, this is really good, and I just like a lot of the themes in it as well. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Spy X Family Volumes 3 and 4 by Tatsuya Endo, translated by Casey Lowe. This is such a fun series. I am really thoroughly enjoying it. It is this kind of fantastical version of the Cold War, and we have a spy, Twilight, who is supposed to infiltrate an elite academy to get close to somebody there. And in order to do this, he gets a fake wife and a fake daughter, but he doesn't realize that his fake wife is actually an assassin and his fake daughter is actually a telepath. This is just such a ridiculous, funny story. I love the humor in it. I love all of the antics, and I love the heart that it has, where the characters are, you know, they're trying to do the right thing. They care about peace. They care about protecting people, and really we have a little bit of a found family literally here, and it's very cute. I especially love anytime the story focuses on Anya, the daughter, because those are very cute antics, especially there's quite a bit involving a dog in these, and things like Anya trying to name the dog is hilarious. So yeah, there's a lot of fun in them. They were a little bit more action-y and violent than I necessarily prefer. I like the more lighthearted humor. Some of these just get into full-blown spy, thriller action. So a little bit too fast-paced for me in these couple of volumes, but I'm still thoroughly enjoying the series, and I can't wait to read more. I gave both of these 4 out of 5 stars. Then I NFNed, or Not For Now'd, one book, which was Summer Will Show by Sylvia Townsend Warner. Sylvia Townsend Warner was writing around the 1930s, and this is a book that I picked up because Anna Marie at Actual Spinster is running this Summer with Sylvia project. So I will link their channel and that project below. So I wanted to read this because it's kind of one of those older classics written by a woman who was queer and communist and all sorts of cool things, but I got through about 18% of this before I realized I just wasn't quite up to it. So this book, I think, is setting up to do some really interesting things, but it's starting out with quite a difficult situation in terms of lots of prejudices that the main character has. And because this is written in the 1930s, there's also just a different way of handling a lot of issues. I think that this story is going to tackle some ideas of race and of homophobia and these sorts of things, but it's quite uncomfortable for me reading it, just the offhanded, bigoted comments left and right. And so I was just struggling with that. It's also just a little bit of a slower read. It's very beautifully written, kind of atmospheric, which I like, but I'm in such a weird reading mood right now that I just was struggling to get through this. So what I've decided is that I'm gonna put this one down, but with the idea that at some point in the future, I wouldn't mind coming back to this and trying it again, especially if I could understand a little bit better how to handle some of that more problematic content in older works, because I do think that a lot of older works have that, even though they have other things that are worth getting out of them. I'm just not quite there yet, knowing how to process it all. So for now, this is a not for now, but maybe in the future I'll try it again. And then I did DNF one book this week, which was The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. So this is a book that I knew could go either way for me. I had absolutely adored Pet by Emezi, but their first book, Freshwater, I actually disliked. I really struggled with that one. And so having had one of their books that I disliked and one of their books which I loved, I was hoping that this third book would be something that I loved. And unfortunately, I think it's a little bit more towards the Freshwater side of their writing style. It's much more literary and kind of heavy. And I really struggled to stay engaged in this. I think that the writing is very, very good. And I loved so much of what they were doing in terms of tackling a lot of issues. So Emezi is Tamil and Igbo, and the main character in this is Tamil and Igbo, Vivek. His mother is from India, but came to Nigeria and married a Nigerian Igbo husband. And so Vivek is, half Tamil, half Igbo, but also is queer and has some sort of otherworldly aspects about him as well. And this whole book is centering on reflecting back, looking at people's memories, even looking at Vivek's perspective as well, and what led up to him dying. So lots of really cool stuff in this. I loved some of the really neat things too. It talked about stuff like one of the supporting characters becomes very evangelical Christian. And I think that that is one of those things that happens in Nigeria, and also like the homophobia, and also a lot of the sort of dynamics between what are called the Niger wives, or the foreign-born women who end up marrying Nigerian men, dealing with major conflicts in terms of what they think is appropriate in a marriage versus what their Nigerian husbands do, such as, second wives, things like that. So many fascinating things in this. And I think that has a lot to offer, but I got through 56% of this, and then I decided to DNF it because I just never wanted to pick this up. Every time it was such a struggle to want to read it, and the heaviness of it, and the feeling of just weight of the difficult situation for Vivek, and the homophobia and the violence. There's quite a bit of things like there's rape, and there's beating of people, and there's riots, and there's infidelity, and there's just all of these very heavy topics that feel heavy for me in this. Also, one other thing that just I really struggled with was there is some cousin incest in this, and it has like kind of graphic sex scenes, and I just felt so uncomfortable with that. I'm fine with sex scenes, but cousins is just, I'm not comfortable with that. So I struggled with this book, and I don't want to make anybody else think that they shouldn't pick this book up, because I know, like, for example, with Freshwater, everybody loved it. I just struggled with it. And I have a feeling that this is another one of those where I'm just somehow not up to the task of reading this book. So in any case, I DNF'd this book, and I think I'm going to be really cautious going forward with Emezi's work, in that I I loved Pet, and I think if they write more things that are meant for a younger audience, I might pick those up, but probably their works for an adult audience are just too much for me, and I'm just not quite up to handling it. Okay, so that is everything that I finished, NFNed, and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you have any thoughts, anything at all, just leave me a comment down below.